Sorry?
We'll see.
Oh, that's the world.
Busy winter so for fall.
Is that right?
Yeah. Always kind of hoping for a little taper, to kind of catch up on some stuff.
Yeah.
Not this year.
Who are the most of your clients? Just residential farmers?
It's a really good mix of all three. Recreational, residents, and farmers. Farmers are pushing it this year, though. Like during COVID, it was all recreational because everybody was home.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And hunters do a little bit, but not anything like the farmers and the recreation folks.
Boy, deer hunting was a tough proposition this year.
That's what I hear.
Oh, my. I think the mountain lions and the coyotes are taking their toll, at least where we are.
Where you at?
Clear up around center Creighton, kind of just south of Missouri River, 30, 40 miles. Yeah, it's, I've never seen so few deer as we're up there.
Really? Well, my buddy where I used to hunt, probably gonna do it next year. He's south of Fremont up there by the old Woodcliff game farm.
Oh, sure,
He lives
yeah.
up on that top.
Yeah, is that Adams?
Yeah, Adam's old place.
Yeah.
He owns 40 acres in there.
Did you get one?
I didn't. He did.
It works out great.
It's a pretty good deer.
Yeah.
It's just easy.
Nice. Yeah, we hardly saw anything. A couple of small bucks.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Well,
It seems very spotty.
that's the area by here. Yeah, game people up there. Somewhere about over 200 checked in on the weekend. They were only had about it was down to 30%.
I think between the two strikes of blue tongue they had,
Yeah. Yep.
they didn't just get one. You didn't have time to use generally. They got hit twice. Within what, 4 years or so? Didn't it happen like 18, 19? Happened again in 21?
Well, yeah, the 2012 they had that hemorrhagic
Oh, and that was a big one.
and that really leveled them out.
I thought it was later.
Well, that was that one. Blue tongue there probably was later. So that does make that does go in cycles.
Oh, is he planning on, I don't think it's not that big of a deal, it's just.
But then you got some places that are doing just fine. Mark or Sal?
Sorry.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Forgot about
Right on the aisle. And he was there, and he's really great with the. He gets more irritating. I know what you're saying. Okay.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, welcome everybody. At 7 o'clock, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll go ahead and open up the Community Development Agency meeting and call it to order. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. At this time, we'll have roll call.
Six council members are present, Mayor.
These items tonight, we had previously continued to this meeting specifically, but we're still waiting on information and our agreement. And so we need to continue this. Again, it'd be indefinitely until we're ready to bring it back. So and legal, we're able to do that if we do items 1, 2, and 3 and just do one motion.
Yeah, that would be a problem with this.
Okay. I would take a motion in regards to these items. Councilman Vaughn.
Motion to continue indefinitely public hearing items 1, 2, and 3.
Councilman Jensen.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Take a motion to adjourn the Community Development Agency meeting. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, we are adjourned. I'll go ahead and open up the City Council regular meeting. Time is 7:01. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call for the City Council meeting.
Please vote for roll call. 6 council members are present, Mayor.
Mayor's comments. We released this week the exciting work we are doing on the new police department location with partnership with RVR Bank. I just wanted to let everyone know that tomorrow, which will be November 15th at 5 p.m. at Gallery 92 West, we will be having a open house to not only discuss this, but as well as the plan for the North Downtown area. We're excited about the opportunities we have in this area and love you to come and be a part of that discussion tomorrow. So again, Gallery 92, tomorrow, November 15th, 5 p.m. That's all I have for my comments. We'll go ahead and move to item 1 on the agenda, which is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the November 14th, 2023 regular meeting. Councilman Von Baron.
I'd like to move to approve the agenda with the exception of, given the number of people here, moving item number 30 to the first item of new business.
Okay. So that would be an amendment to move item 30 to the first item in new business. Is there any other changes? Councilman Vaughn?
We also not need to move items 3, 4, and 5, or maybe even more in conjunction with the
Yes.
3, 4, 5, and 6. So yeah, continuing those indefinitely. Add on to them.
Okay. we'll handle these amendments. I just want to make sure there's no other amendments, and then we'll get to work on those. I'll go ahead with the first one. Vote to this would be amend the agenda to continue items 3 through 6 indefinitely. You want to make that motion then? Okay. Councilman Vaughn, Sukram.
I'll second.
Okay, cast your votes on that amendment to the agenda.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, move on to the next amendment, which again would be to move item 30 as the first item in new business. Councilman Von Baron, make that.
So moved.
Okay. Councilman Vaughn. Is there a second on that amendment to the agenda? Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the second.
Okay, cast your votes on that amendment.
Motion carries 5-1, Mayor.
Then I would take a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Councilman Vaughn,
So moved.
Councilwoman Lathrop,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to appointments. Item 2 is a move to confirm the appointment of Ross Godfrey as firefighter EMT per mayor recommendation. It is my pleasure tonight to bring forward a new appointment to our fire department, Ross Godfrey. He has met all the qualifications, has gone through the civil service process, and we're excited for him to join the fire department. I would take any comments from council. If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
And if there's no questions, I'll make the motion.
Okay. Councilman Jensen,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Mr. Godfrey is here. Would you please stand and be recognized, and thank you. Congratulations. Welcome to the Fremont Fire Department. Glad to have you. Moving on to item 7, which is under public hearings, resolution 2023-215 to approve a conditional use permit for a self-storage facility generally described as tax lot 101, generally located at the northeast corner of Cleary Road and Judy Drive.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the request for the self-storage facility. It is connected with the third and final reading for a change of zone that's on the agenda later. This has taken a little while to get to you because they wanted to make sure that they had all of their drainage issues addressed properly before it came forward. We have been satisfied with the way they've developed the drainage. There will be a detention cell and then a drainage ditch around the facility. As I understand, there will be no more water running off this than there is today. There is, the first phase will just be a small storage unit and then contractor's office. And then future development will add additional contractor's offices and storage units. It will be secured by the backs of the storage units and then fencing in between and storage gates. As you can see from the landscape plan, they more than exceed our landscaping requirements, and staff recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report. Are there any questions from the council? Seeing none. Oh, Councilman Von Baron.
No, just one comment. Given the flood drainage plan that we were given several months ago, appreciate taking care of the detention pond and the drainage and managing the water on site. That's a good move. Thank you.
Yeah, the applicant has really worked well with us to
Appreciate that.
make sure that this is worked out.
Okay. I will now open the public hearing on resolution 2023-215. Anybody here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram,
I'll make the motion for resolution 2023-215.
Councilman Jensen,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 8 is ordinance 5659 to modify and continue the Business Improvement District number 1 in the downtown. This would be for first reading. Doing our staff report tonight will be BID board member Sam Heineman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Here to give the report, filling in for our chairman, Tom Godet. This is for the renewal of the Business Improvement District downtown. This is the recommendation from the board. First of 3 readings, ultimately whatever is up to the council for decision. Just kind of hit some of the highlights here. The renewal highlights, as we've gone through, we received feedback, the H Street area. The property owners over there felt it was best to be removed from the district as it's hard to get flower baskets, traffic, things like that over into that area. Our recommendation is to have that removed from the district, as well as single family homes. And then 2 additions to the district would be the First Street Mall and the former Fremont Tribune building. Feedback we received from members downtown was they feel there's a little more benefit to the Main Street area than maybe some of the peripheral streets like D Street or Park. So we came up with a 2-tier system to help address some of that. The total assessments for 2024 would be projected at $56,000, up slightly from $48,000 the previous 7 years. And the major projects that are going to be completed in the next 2 years is the tear out and replace of the parking lot at 6th and Park, including screening. 2025, tear out and replace the parking lot at 3rd and Main Street, and install archways into the downtown at Military and Main and Broad Street, as well as continue with many of the items like flower baskets, banners, Christmas decorations, a little history on it. Again, we talked about the H Street area being removed. There's roughly 26 properties in that area. The single family residence will be automatically exempt. The definition we worked with Tyler at the city would be defined by a single family by the assessor, as well as they have 1 address. This will eliminate the process of previous years where you had to mail out exemption forms, mail them back. These are going to be very black and white, so we don't have to go through that. It's going to save staff time and money mailing out. We added 2. The levy, as we discussed, the 2-tier, the main area, Main Street, between Military and, or on Main Street between Military and First. And then 6th Street between Broad and Main, they're going to have a levy of $160 per 100,000 in assessed value. The rest of the district is 120. For comparison, right now, the whole district was 136. So those in the corridor are up slightly, the rest are down a little bit. The recommendation would be a 5-year renewal. Some of the accomplishments, the new speaker system, which we raised $45,000 from outside funds for, continue to do things like flower baskets, host events downtown, sponsor those. Why it's important to downtown, it was one of the goals and objectives in the comp plan. We get to the parking lot on 6th and Park. The city put it in their council or the next 2-year budget and had already approved it, so that will get torn out and replaced. Same with 3rd and Main Street, that's 2025. Parking lot screening, which is recommended in the comp plan and required by code when you tear out and replace, it's going to be installed. It'd be something like that. The one on 6th and Park, in the budget that the council passed, there was a contribution from other funding sources of $27,500 that would come from the Business Improvement District. 2025 would be 3rd and Main Street. The contribution from the Business Improvement District would be $21,250 as budgeted and passed. And we have the downtown archways, where the budget included $37,500 in a private contribution, and we have a donor that has pledged that. as well as Broad Street, Sixth and Broad. It was put in budgets beyond the next 2-year budget, but we had a donor reach out to us that said they thought it would make the most sense to do both at the same time, and graciously volunteered to donate $122,500 for these 2 archways, and that should be coming before council next session for approval of acceptance on it. So I really want to highlight, we've been working hard to find other funding sources, find donors that want to help support some of these projects downtown. We'll continue to do flower baskets, bags and Christmas decorations. There's some contracts for services that we need, sponsor of programs for events like John C. Fremont Days, Christmas Walk, Hispanic Festival, Concert in the Park, trying to draw traffic downtown. 2024 budget, we'll end up using about $22,500 from reserves that the BID has to accomplish all the projects we want to accomplish. 2025 is $11,250 from reserves. And so you can see the breakdown, the projected balance going into the next 2 years is $75,000 to accomplish all the projects. The BID would still have a cash reserve of $41,000. Over the next 2 years, you can see total BID contributions is actually less than what we already have committed from donors. And we think a thriving downtown benefits everyone and provides a place to gather for the community. We offer dining, shopping, entertainment, creates a sense of belonging. And the financial benefit to the city is increased sales tax revenue, increased food and beverage tax revenue, and increased property tax revenue. So be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilman Vaughn?
Don't necessarily have a question. I just want to commend you and the rest of the BID group for being able to pull in these private donations for some pretty cool stuff, in my estimation. Pretty excited, and I think it got great things going.
We appreciate that. Yeah, we've been fortunate. The city's been very generous with us too to help with the parking lot. So thank you for that.
Councilman Jensen?
Just a question, is there any reason not to suspend rules and move this to third and final and be finished tonight?
I can't speak for the BID. My personal opinion, I would say it's good to get input from, the community and give them 3 opportunities. There's no rush to do it. So I would say, let's continue with the process.
Yeah, Councilman Jensen, we wouldn't be able to approve this all. This is just for the public hearing and the first reading. We could do it at the next meeting and suspend it.
I think we have time is a good thing. So I don't think there's any rush to.
Yeah, there's no rush. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Any other questions for the BID on this?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll now open the public hearing on this item. Anybody here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any additional comments from the council on this? Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor and council, we did send out letters to notice the public hearing, and we did have one property owner come in and request. They do have a single family and it meets their criteria based upon single family and one address. And so there'll be an amendment at the next meeting to include this property. And that's after consulting with representatives from the BID on agreeing with that. So.
Okay. And I'll also be clear, this presentation is in the backup in the city council. So if you want to, go into it a little more detail, you can do that. So. Councilman Jensen.
So if there's no further comment, I'll make the motion to move forward with ordinance 5659 on first reading.
Councilman Vaughn.
I would second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to thank you. We'll have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska to continue the existence and authority of the Fremont Business Improvement District Number 1, establishing the purpose for such district, providing that retail property within the district shall be subject to special assessments, amending and describing the boundaries of the Fremont Business Improvement District Number 1, amending and establishing the proposed method of assessment to be imposed within the district, providing penalties for failure to pay special assessments, repealing ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing for severability, and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on first reading.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council or staff? Seeing none, any items by the public? Okay, seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilman Von Baron,
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Councilman Sukram,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business, item 23, ordinance 5657 to amend sections 11-824, 11-825 of the Unified Development Code relating to off-premise directional signs and to off-premise commercial electronic messaging signs. This would be for final reading.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. I have been working with individuals regarding off-premise signs for the last probably more than a year at this point in time. We have looked at static billboards and electronic billboards, and I think we've come to a pretty good compromise regarding this. It would allow electronic changeable signage only every 5,000 feet or about a mile along the corridor of 275 as it curves around into Highway 30. And then on the south bypass, there has been a request for an amendment to allow electronic messaging signs on 23rd Street and North Broad Street, provided that those be, I think we came up with 6,000 feet apart from one another, which essentially would allow one on the east side of 23rd Street, one on the west side of 23rd Street, a face on each side, and one on North Broad Street. In exchange, the person putting those signs up would have to take down 4 static faces. Staff recommends approval of this proposed amendment. We do have an amended ordinance that has changed from what originally was in your packet, which includes information on the 23rd Street signage and the North Broad Street signage. We would ask, though, that on that 11-825-05B2 subsection E, where we talk about the leading edge of the sign, as we've gone back and forth about that, the proponent and I have realized that it's actually more confusing than clarifying. And so we would ask that that just be stricken, and we can determine the setback as these would go through a conditional use permit process. We can figure out what's too close, what's too far away, and just determine that through the conditional use permit process. I would be happy to answer any questions for you at this point. I know the applicant is here and has lots to say as well.
Just to be clear, we would need to make an amendment tonight to the ordinance.
Correct.
Okay. Councilman Vaughn?
So we were possibly had an open-ended point as far as the size of the signage. And
Right, and
I believe your recommendation was,
yeah, as we had discussed, we had talked about a 12 by 24 foot sign on 23rd and Broad Streets. I think that's one of the things that the applicant or proponent, I guess, would ask you to increase that to 12 by 36. I think that's the size. And I will let them talk with you about that and how it fits within the scale of the area. As you look at that commercial corridor, it would be consistent with the size as you come into Inglewood. The electronic sign that's there, I think, is about that 12 by 24 foot size. It would fit the scale well, kind of depending on the placement. You know, if you're right in front of Walmart, for example, that's such a big scale area that maybe a larger sign would fit.
do we have to lock it in this ordinance, or can they be as they come to us?
I would put a maximum size in. I would have a sign face have a maximum size, but if you think that it's appropriate to be smaller, make sure that, the planning commission and council could make that recommendation.
Thank you. And also thank you for all your hard work on this.
Thank you.
Are there any, Councilman Von Baron?
Yeah, Jennifer, what, I guess I've gotten a little lost in the count. How many static signs then around Fremont? Is there an actual count on the signs that will remain as static signs? Like, for example, those along Bell?
So at this point in time, all of the static signs will remain in place. If someone comes forward with a conditional use permit for an electronic message sign on 23rd Street or on on North Broad Street, then they would have to remove 4 existing static sign faces in town. The Victor Sign, who I have been working with, has proposed that they would like to put a sign up on 23rd Street and they would remove those 4 faces on Bell Street until this has passed and they come forward with a conditional use permit. Nothing is changing.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you. Anybody here to speak on this item?
Good evening, Dave Mitchell, 81 West Fifth Street, Fremont. I'm here with Bruce Nelson. Bruce is the owner of Eagle Distributing and also Nelson Enterprises, which owns Victor Outdoor. First, I'd also like to echo comments of Councilman Vaughn. We want to thank you for working with us. This has been a long 2-year process. You've got a great city planner. We've had lots of dialogue. We've disagreed on a lot of things, and we've worked through a lot of things to come up with an ordinance that we think works the best for the city of Fremont, that works best for businesses, and it's just good as a whole. So we agree with all of the comments that Jennifer has made. We're on the same page with everything. We just have one caveat. So with respect to the interior signage that will be allowed by way of conditional use permit, in Victor's case, the signs that will be removed will be 4 sign faces on Bell Street that are by the juice stop, just south of the juice stop. Not very attractive signs. You've got 4 12 by 24 structures there, and that encompasses 1,152 square feet of signage. If we went down to the 12 by 24 as recommended, that would reduce the total amount of square footage that Victor would have from 1,152 down to 576 square feet, because you'd have 2 12 by 24s on the new sign structure. That may work depending upon the circumstances. However, a 12 by 36 structure times 2 sign faces would be 864 square feet, or still a reduction in square footage to the benefit of the city of about 288 square feet. What we would ask is, out in that particular corridor, that is a commercial corridor, and that commercial corridor will continue to develop. And depending upon where we would be able to negotiate sign placement may determine the size of the sign face that would need to go up, because it needs to be visible. Some of you probably have seen the structure out near Valley, past Valley, as you approach the curve. It's about a 12 by 24 structure, so you can't read it. It's too high and it's too far away from the road. You can't read it. And so we would just like to have the flexibility, in light of the fact that we'll be operating under a conditional use permit, for that subsection D that says the size of the sign face shall be no greater than 12 feet by 24 feet. If we could say it shall be no greater than 12 by 36 feet, that still gives you the discretion in determining what we can place there at the end of the day, because we're coming before you with a conditional use permit. If you feel it's too large based upon where it's being placed, then you can require it to be smaller. But based upon what we're presenting, if we feel it needs to be larger and we're able to convince you that it needs to be larger, well, then you'd have 12 by 26. So we're putting a maximum there, but that doesn't tie your hands. to any given structure. It just gives us an opportunity to propose something that you may or may not agree with at the end of the day, but doesn't require an ordinance change in the event that everyone's on the same page that, oh yeah, 12 by 26 is going to work here, but we're going to have to go through and change the ordinance again. If on the other hand, you retain the discretion under that conditional use permit to have the final say as far as the sign face sizes, then the intent of the ordinance will have been achieved and you've got the hammer at the end of the day. Other than that, we think the ordinance is fair. It's a product of a lot of hard work, and we appreciate you folks working with us. And if you have any questions for me or any questions for Bruce, we would be more than happy to visit with you about that.
Are there any questions from the council? Councilman Vaughn?
I guess more so a comment. Yeah, I would echo the sentiment that we've all expressed, that we work together well to, prevent the worst case scenario that some of us had in our head of what this could have turned into. So I do appreciate that good faith effort. And so in that spirit of cooperation, knowing that we will have the final say on every given sign and its ultimate size, I would be okay with the 12 by 36 maximum. Adjust as needed from there. So.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thanks very much.
You. Are there anybody else here to speak on this item?
Brad, you're at 2318 East Fifth Street. I've listened to the discussion that you've had multiple times. A lot of this sounds pretty good. I noticed early on that Councilman Vaughn had some concerns about the 23rd Street corridor. My concerns that I recommended be discussed haven't come up from you yet. And I would hope that maybe someone would pick up and ask the planning director to come back and address the question that I raised back at first reading. And that was whether or not there were issues related to the UDC that's forthcoming that we have paid tens of thousands of dollars to a consultant on relative to the signage portions of that UDC that we have yet to see or that has been discussed in congruence with what you're about to do to existing code. If this fits within the new UDC that's being proposed by the consultant, that's fine. If it doesn't, has there been discussion with the consultant about incorporating this in the UDC, and does it fit with what they're recommending elsewhere? Because we paid an awful lot of money to a consultant to advise us on these things. And one of those is going to be signage. So if I've talked to Jennifer about some of this, if she could illuminate some of you relative to our discussion, I think that would be great. It's up to you to ask her. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Any comments from the council? Councilwoman Lathrop?
Jennifer, I know that we've worked really hard on the new UDC. Can you just enlighten us on these issues?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As we've gone through the UDC process, we had also been negotiating and talking about billboards. Currently in the UDC, billboards are not permitted. At the time our existing UDC was adopted, my understanding is that that was not something that there was a lot of public discussion about. Throughout the process of moving the UDC forward, we have had a lot of discussion about billboards in the different community meetings that we've had, subcommittee meetings, and meetings on each chapter. You might recall, I think it was in February of last year, that we had the study session talking about signage and landscaping. We touched a little bit on billboards at that point. Our consultant asked, let's just hold off. We're not going to make a recommendation until the community comes up with a solution. So that's where we've been. So whatever we have that moves forward with this, we'll incorporate into the new UDC.
Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I would take a motion. This would be to, first of all, to amend for the max of 12 by 36. Is that the amendment? Okay. Councilman Sukram.
I actually have a quick question.
Okay.
On the electronic here, it says hold second reading. This is final reading, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
this is final
I
reading.
just want to make sure. So,
Yes.
and I'll make that motion.
Okay. Councilman Jensen.
I'll second the amendment.
All right. Cast your votes on the amendment.
Carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, now I take a motion to ordinance 5657 as amended to hold final reading. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to hold final reading of ordinance 5657 as amended.
Councilman Sukram.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We'll have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending Exhibit B of Ordinance 5427, specifically portions of the UDC Chapter 11 zoning subdivision site development Exhibit B, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on final reading.
Cast your final vote.
Ordinance is approved 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 24, ordinance 5654 on behalf of Apple D Acres for a change of zone from R rural to LI light industrial on property generally described as tax lot 101, generally located at the northeast corner of Prairie Road and Judy Road, Dodge County, Nebraska. This would be for final reading.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the third and final reading for the ordinance for the change of zone to light industrial that's associated with the conditional use permit that you took action on a little bit earlier. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public on this? Seeing none, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion to hold final reading. Councilman Vaughn. So moved. Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Now have final reading, ordinance 5654.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property generally located at the northeast corner of Judy Road and Prairie Road, legally described as tax lot 101, located in the southwest quarter of section 2, township 17 north range east of the 6 p.m. Dodge County, Nebraska, from R rural to LI light industrial, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on final reading.
Cast your final vote.
Ordinance is approved 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to new business item 30, motion to consider, approve, and issue a formal reprimand and censure of council member under Fremont Municipal Code 2-108. Councilman Von Baron.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting week since I submitted this. I've had a lot of conversations with people, a lot of conversations with council persons, and it's interesting. There have been so many events behind this that one of the things that seems to be confusing it is the recent charges that were filed. So I'd like to clarify a couple of things. First of all, this is not against a person. This is really about the council holding itself accountable. We have some things that are codified by ordinance, but at the end of the day, policing our conduct is really our responsibility. So it's not just about one person, it's about a trend, and trying to establish some level of accountability among us, among the council, as to our actions and the standards to which we hold ourselves. I think it's important to recognize that as public officials, we're elected to represent the people of Fremont, and that includes our actions. And whether we like it or not, we've been drug into the world of politics, which exposes even our private actions to the public eye. The public does and should expect us to conduct ourselves in a professional manner that's worthy of the trust that they've put us in, putting us behind this desk. And that simply means that we are and we should be held to a higher standard than the average public would be. If we don't do that, and if we don't hold ourselves accountable for our speech and our actions, in some sense, we're almost living a double life where we think we can work on one side of the podium and behave in any way we want to on the other side of the podium. And what's interesting is a couple of times we've offered the argument that, well, councilmen are obligated to their voters at the end of the day. Well, if the only time voters can take action is every 4 years, it's probably even a bigger problem. There's nothing in the middle for anyone to deal with anything. And that's really as much as anything what this is about. Either we hold ourselves accountable or we continue under this image. We're all suffering under that national backwash of questions that simply says, hey, is our government now entirely above the law? And that bothers me, even though it's not necessarily directed at us. It's something that we live with as a result of the world we're in right now. So it's not just about one incident. It's about just the general disrespect for the public, derogatory remarks, public profanity. If you look on the agenda, you'll see at the bottom of the page that is expressly forbidden. We violated our own council speech limits. And now we have had disrespect blatant enough that's resulted in public charges. And again, those public charges are not the issue here. Those are the final act that probably led me to do this, but those are a separate issue. On one side, we seem to keep trying to muddy this by constantly connecting it solely to the September 26th incident. Yes, that was part of it. But at the same time, there are two sides to this. Our city attorney has a legal proceeding that he is pursuing right now. That is separate, independent, completely irrelevant, actually, to what we do here as a council. What I'm asking the council is to take our own action. That's not legal action. And what I'm asking for is simply the mildest thing that we can do. It's just simply a statement that goes on the record. It doesn't result in any loss of privilege. It's not vindictive. It's not intended to demean anyone. It's just directed at a behavior. And it just simply says, we're not going to let ourselves go to this. We're going to hold ourselves to a higher standard. So I'm asking the council in that light, the only thing we really have to decide is, do we really have any standards for ourselves as a council? Do we have any standards at all? I don't care. Put a different name in there. Put my name in here. Do we have standards for Paul Von Baron? I would hope that answer is at least yes. And the second question is, are we as a council willing to police ourselves and be accountable to the people of Fremont? So to me, I just want to get some of that out of the way, because this has been very confused and muddied by a lot of conversation. And we're dealing with the principle here, not necessarily a person. Thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for the overwhelming support that I've received regarding this matter, particularly those that took the time to understand all the circumstances that led to the events of September 26th. I had several members that wanted to come here and speak on my behalf tonight. Last Wednesday, I was told that since this was a council action, public comment was not going to be allowed. So I told them not to waste their time. Don't bother showing up. 1 o'clock this afternoon, that changed. I was contacted, said, yes, there would be public comment. I guarantee you there were several conversations that were had this afternoon concerning that. While not proud of my actions then, given the circumstances leading up to that meeting, I do feel somewhat justified in those actions. Respect is a two-way street. One should not expect respect without showing any. Our public comment period, beginning the final meeting of each month, under its current format, invites disrespect. I, with others, will look at the possibility of modifying that format. I believe that this action being brought forward is an attempt to get members of council on record regarding this, particularly those that have elections coming up in 2024, and try to use it against them. As I understand, a reprimand or censure is an official formal statement of severe disapproval or rebuke. If passed by council, such formal statement will remain part of the permanent public record. I certainly understand members of council being reluctant to vote in a way that could be construed as supporting my actions of that night. I also understand those who may feel making a censure of me part of a permanent public record is well beyond warranted given the circumstances. Abstaining on this vote is the option I'm going to use. I encourage all of council to vote as they see fit, and together, let's get on with actually conducting the business genuinely important to our city.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
First of all, Paul, thank you for visiting with so many of us. I have really struggled with this issue, as I discussed with you. I do understand the importance of elected officials being held to a higher standard, and personally, I do attempt to maintain that standard. I also understand that during the open public comment portion of our meetings, profanity, applause, booing, or other indications of support or displeasure are not allowed. Accordingly, we as a council have unfortunately witnessed or fallen victim to such actions from the public with no opportunity to address untruths or misinformation hurled at us. With that being said, I feel it necessary for this council to explore options for brief council rebuttal at the end of public comment when such comments directly affect or pertain to a council member or even challenge our integrity. Ironically, shortly before this meeting, I was presented with a potential solution. James?
Councilman Vaughn.
Well, first and foremost, I owe an apology to all the members of the city council because this idea that occurred to me in my head only happened on the drive home from work today. So I wish it would have come to me sooner so it could have had a little more time to be vetted out. But I'll try to be as concise as I can. But you know, there are several facets of this that bother me and many people that I've talked to. So, you know, Lori has already alluded to, there are clauses in here about profanity, raised voice, and things that the public aren't allowed to do. But we're talking about censuring Mr. Jensen, but is there any talk about repercussions for the individual that was also involved in this interaction? I understand that the go-to defense in lieu of that is, well, we're held to a higher standard. But do we have to ask ourselves what's a higher standard mean? Because if we're going to hold ourselves to that higher standard and pick and choose when we enforce these and when we censure or when we do whatever, is that really the higher standard? I mean, I think the higher standard is we would hold everybody accountable. And so ultimately what I'm leading up to is a proposed continuation of this censure bid for a meeting or two because of an idea that I'll get to. I know I'm rambling here, but our public comment process is broken and has been for a long time. I think we would all probably acknowledge that. It's almost next to worthless. And so a thought occurred to me that we could potentially have a much better system. Why wouldn't we have public comment before every single city council meeting? Now you can't have all 8 of us here. You can't have even 5 for a quorum. So why would we not have wards 1, 2, 3, 4, take the first meeting of the month, come in at 6:30, be able to have a public dialogue, a back and forth, a conversation, not just a one-way street of things being alleged and said about us that we have no choice but to sit here and just, you know, take it on the chin. The second council meeting of the month, that side of the room would then come in at 6:30 and be able to engage in a conversation with the public, as opposed to the current process we have now, which it's just so pathetic, honestly, that it's almost laughable that there's no opportunity for feedback. And the public has clamored about that on more than one occasion, and I wholeheartedly agree with them. What's the point of being able to say things if we can't give you any feedback? That's a great idea. I can't even say that. That's a terrible idea. I can't say that. Hey, let's talk about that some more. I can't say that. So our current system of public comment, I think, should morph and change into a system of public discussion. And that could happen at every single council meeting. We could divvy it up, and it wouldn't be any more undue burden than the half an hour early obligation we're all held to once a month. We would alternate. So it's kind of a wash in that regard. And I would just hate to miss this opportunity to fix the root of the problem instead of just addressing a symptom. Does Mark deserve a censure? Yeah, probably does. And I'm sitting here right now committing to that if we would be able to vote and continue this for a meeting or two in order to get some ducks in a row and figure it out if this public discussion idea is doable, then I will be the first one to vote yes on a censure of Mr. Jensen. But I don't think it's unreasonable to ask. I mean, this is already 6, 8, 10 weeks old. I don't remember how long, but what's another meeting or two's worth going to hurt if we can accomplish something that is long overdue? 2 birds, 1 stone. I would, take some other thoughts and opinions from other members of the council. Obviously, legal would have to help vet this out. Is this even logistically possible? And, do the other members of the council think that this idea has merit? But, just the whole idea, there's no repercussions to the other party. And we got the provisions, they're listed right here, but we don't enforce them. But we're going to choose to enforce them on Mark. Maybe justly so, but still, it's not equal, and it doesn't really seem fair. Guess my time's up.
Okay. Any other comments, Councilman Dinkins?
I guess I would agree, James, that you should have thought of this earlier. So, I know we're not voting, but I like your idea, and I guess like to see it move forward a little bit.
Anybody that hasn't spoken at this point in the process? Councilman Sukram?
I'd have to echo James. Would have been sooner, would have been better, but I'd like to see the idea go through legal and see what we can do with it.
Okay. All right, everybody's had a chance to speak on this at this point. We'll move on. Is there anybody here to speak on this issue? Please come forward, state your name and address, please.
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124. And I agree with what you're saying, because a lot of times we think that we have to say something sharp so that you understand and remember it. And if you have a discussion, you can ask questions back and forth. And if someone has been lied to and is bringing a lie before us, we have the right to discuss that and track it down. And so those are just things where the feedback, I think, is a great idea. And I would appreciate that much more than I would the coming with a public gripe session. But it is, we need the human feedback, because recently, I think I was at a meeting to a very nice woman was talking, and I'm certain she was lied to. And she was telling us what I consider as a lie. And I don't have that verification, but I'm of that opinion. So we need to be able to challenge these different things. So I'm with you on that. And I prefer it much better than just this other where we come up and talk to a brick wall, and you have to sit there and you're not even supposed to nod your head that you agree or anything like that. And so it's very artificial when we come and talk. So I think the feedback is very important.
Laura Bushy, 2037 East First. I agree with Councilman Vaughn. Also, I speak quite often at open meetings. I think that we have to have a standard also. Some of the things that I've heard, not just in regards to this subject, but others in the past, and I'm pretty broad-minded, but I have been shocked. And I think we need to be held, like I said, to a standard. And there should be some reprimands if, okay, vulgarity. Councilman Jensen didn't use the vulgarity. Somebody else did. And I was here. I didn't get everything she said, but I think there's other ways people can, if that's the word that was used, that she can, or that they, I'm sorry, that they can say that. You don't need to use the words. But again, if I do something wrong, I want to be told. I want to be held accountable. Thank you.
Right here, 2318 East Fifth Street. I'm going to start off with something that I hadn't planned on discussing, I guess, because I think it's too bad that we got so far off track. I'm not opposed to Councilman Vaughn's discussion of an item like that, and he should bring that as a separate agenda item. This agenda item was billed as a motion to censure, period, not a discussion of what we might do in lieu of that. That's a masters of deflection. And quite honestly, I think this council is really great at it, oftentimes with the help of legal, who didn't intervene when we got way off track of Mr. Von Baron's agenda item. Having said all of that, this proposed act of censure does not overlap with any civil investigation. It stands on its own. Council members take an oath to faithfully fulfill the duties of the office according to the law. To perform those duties, you're each required to interact and represent your constituents, as well as all other citizens of Fremont. As council members, you all have the responsibility and are obligated to demonstrate professionalism at all times when communicating with and serving the public. Council assumes the responsibility to elect one of its members to serve as the council president. This position requires an extra measure of professionalism because that position stands in line to be second to the mayor in running this city. No one is perfect, but if and when mistakes are made, personal responsibility and remorse are essential. In the case at hand, neither seems apparent. Blaming bad behavior on constituents and call you or attempting to deflect the matter as insignificant don't cut it and shouldn't be taken seriously as an excuse tonight. Repeated and blatant misconduct must be addressed. When a council member repeatedly fails to demonstrate that they are capable of serving professionally, this council is the only body and means outside the ballot box where a council member can be held accountable for their misconduct and their inappropriate actions and conversations with the public. Foul and confrontational language is just not acceptable when you're in a public official. In circumstances such as this, the council must police itself. Coming from the private sector, it was never fun to give a less than satisfactory appraisal to somebody or to someone that you were going to put on a performance plan for failing to deliver what was required for the job. But that's exactly what's required for performance issues that continue. Otherwise, they'll get even worse. In the case at hand, it's the council itself that must take action. Censure is the council's equivalent to the private sector's performance plan. It's painful but necessary. Council inaction to date has led us to the point of formal censure. If the conduct you witnessed over the past several months and the latest repeated failures to follow city code and the mayor's instructions by engaging with a private citizen during public comment weren't enough, all you needed to hear was the TV interview that ran last night. During the interview, there was no indication of personal accountability or remorse. Instead, the city council president tried to blame others and deflect the matter as insignificant and unworthy of discussion. Yet here we are. It's obvious that it was a violation of city code and unprofessional conduct, as well as an unremorseful attitude that this council must address with censure. Turning a blind eye and failing to issue a censure now only facilitates continued bad behavior and other future misconduct. As I said earlier, you must police yourselves. Show the public that you have what it takes to formally call out misconduct and overt failure to follow city code. That's your job. Thank you.
Steve Ray, 1445 North Irving Street. I would agree with Mr. Vaughn that that discussion would make more sense. I guess I would ask why you wouldn't want all, I know it takes an extra half hour twice a month then if you want to do that, rather than just half of you, because if only half of you are here and somebody discusses one of the people that's not on the other half, he has no chance to respond. However, like a lot of people, I think it should have been and this tonight is not about changing our public forum. And yes, I think people need to be held accountable out here, and they're supposed to be. And that's up to the person in charge of the meeting to make sure that public out here is quiet and being respectful. If not, one alternative is to clear the room if they have to. I've been to the State House. I've been taken out a couple times. We weren't even doing anything. It was the other people, but they said clear the house, and they clear the whole house. They don't clear just certain people. Somebody that's up here speaking, it's being disrespectful or whatever, you should ask them to just leave. No questions asked. That's what part of the thing is. Addressing Mr. Jensen's problem, however, this is not the first time that he's had a problem. This is the second time he's been asked to be censured, and the first time it never even made it. And like Mr. Yeager says, it is your job to police yourselves. And I think you should take action on it tonight and move ahead with Mr. Vaughn's idea and see if it can be. I think some dialogue back and forth would be great with this subject. I mean, give some people some answers. A lot of people leave here thinking, well, I didn't get no answers tonight. They all just sit there. And I understand that's your job this way. I don't think Mr. Jensen's very apologetic. His interview in the paper stated he thinks there's an agenda trying to not get people like him elected. I don't know where he's coming from for that, just because he's the one that said things, and he is supposed to be. And as president of the council, he should be more so. And I realize it takes a thick skin to sit up there and take some of the stuff that comes your way. But that's what you signed on for. And it's time that you do something about it. I've talked to a lot of different people, and they all want to know why he's sitting there and getting away with this. And it makes all of you look bad if you don't say, well, we're not condoning that. So that's all I have to say.
Scott Preston, 1717 East 12th Street. First of all, I'd like to thank Councilman Von Baron for getting this item on the agenda. I do think it's an important issue, and I am interested in the outcome. And I'd also like to say that I don't have anything personal against Councilman Jensen. As you likely know, he and I didn't see eye to eye on the library issues that came up earlier this year, but I appreciated that he consistently attended the library board meetings to keep tabs on and get a firsthand look at the process that was going on. And as far as I know, his attendance at those meetings was in no way required. Having said that, I do come this evening to speak in support of Councilman Von Baron's request to reprimand and censure Councilman Jensen for his conduct. Oxford Languages says that to censure means to express severe disapproval of someone or something, especially in a formal statement. Now, most of the time when we encounter things that we don't approve of in our daily lives, we don't say or do anything. In those cases, I would say we're not expressing approval of whatever it is, but we're tolerating it. And we're making the decision that censuring it is not worth our time. And I completely understand that, because I don't have enough available time to formally express disapproval for all the things that I see in the world that I disapprove of. And I suspect that you don't have that kind of time either. However, this isn't daily life. In this case, the council's being provided a formal opportunity and time to express disapproval for the conduct of one of its members. Thus, I believe that to reject this motion is not merely to tolerate the conduct, it's the approval of it. It's the approval of contempt for the public. It's the approval of derogatory remarks. It's the approval of public profanity. It's the approval of violating council rules. It's the approval of disrespect for a constituent so blatant that formal charges have been filed. If Councilman Jensen's actions don't rise to the level of formally disapproving them, what's the line in the sand? If you don't disapprove of this conduct, what would it take for you to disapprove? Which broken ordinance or what conduct is a bridge too far? You should probably start thinking about that, because to do nothing about it is going to encourage these limits to be pushed again, either by Councilman Jensen or someone else. I encourage you to take this opportunity to hold yourselves as a body to a high standard of conduct and to send a clear message that the public shall be respected by the people they voted into office. Set the precedent that these types of actions will not be approved.
Dale Finney, 512 West Military Avenue. I've just been sitting here listening, and the one thing that everybody agrees on is that the system is broken. There's how can you censor for a man that for something that he did on a system that's broken? You need a different system. You have if none of you are following the old system and following the rules, how can you choose him to be censored? And another thing, just listening, you said a censor has no real power. So why do it? Why not take and go forward with the possible cure for the problem? And thank you all very much for your time.
Name is Gene Schultz, live at 2306 Gene Drive. Well, as you can see, I didn't bring any paper up here, so I wasn't prepared to say anything, but I'll just make a couple observances. Did I hear tonight that the people in the audience here don't get held up to a certain standard? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that I remember a lady being led out of here for what she said, and she ended up getting fined $25 or something like that. Is my memory wrong? Another thing, we're talking about changing the scheme of the public comments. Not too long ago, I remember we were kind of in an uproar because you wanted to limit the speech that we could make. So now you're going to change that. I don't have any problem with that idea, but so I just wanted to mention those things. Thank you.
Tim Howard, 2665 Park Place Drive. Last time I spoke to you, I had some prepared statements, but I won't tonight. So I hope I don't ramble in what I have to say. First of all, I do agree with what Brad Yerger has said. You might have some great ideas, Mr. Vaughn, but I think that tonight's agenda item is about the censure motion and not about modifying the process. I think really this comes down to two separate things. One of them is whether we're going to have a set of rules that we're going to adhere to and be held accountable to. I don't think anybody wants a city council meeting where people yell and scream back and forth at each other, where we allow the public to yell and use profanity, scream back at each other, to boo and to chant. We don't want that type of thing. Nobody wants that type of thing. And that's the reason that we have these rules that are here. And when Councilman Jensen has raised his voice and spoken out of turn, he has broken the rules.
and that we're asking the public to abide by. Now, whether this other lady, I wasn't here at that particular meeting, although I watched it, if she needs to be held accountable, I have no issue with that. But the issue is right now, what we're talking about is Councilman Jensen. And we need to live by the rules that we have in place for this council. About a month ago, I was playing at an establishment downtown and happened to leave and to turn onto Military Avenue, and a policeman turned on his lights behind me, and I was like, oh my goodness, what happened? And I had just, all I had done was failed to turn on my turn signal when I went onto Military Avenue. There was no traffic, there was no danger for anything. I was respectful to that officer. I apologized for not having my turn signal on. He gave me a warning, but had he given me a ticket, I would not have challenged that ticket because I broke the rules. I would have paid the ticket and gone on, because that's why we have rules. We have rules for safety. We have rules for order. And what we have here is rules that we don't seem to have an agreement as to whether we need to abide by them or not. I think the second thing is that we need to talk about civility. I'm about 60 years old, and I remember a time when it seemed like, at least on the surface, that politics were a little more civil than they are today. You know, there's such a polarized part of our nation that people can't seem to agree without yelling at each other. And you see it enough on the national scene that we really don't need to see that same type of thing here locally. And I really think that in the matter of what goes on in this chamber, there needs to be civility. And I will agree that I think the people that sit on that side of the desk, you have to be held to a higher standard. You may not agree with that, but I think, as some others have said, that's what you sign up for. I've seen a couple of our presidents sit and be harassed by the press and maintain composure and not strike back at the press. Maybe not the last couple of presidents, but I've seen that in the past. And I think we need more people with that type of a mentality and demeanor in politics. We need less Bo Pellinis and more Tom Osborne's in our public offices. And I think in the end, we need to say, is this type of behavior acceptable? And while we're only mentioning the September 26th issue, we have to remember that there was profanity used by Mr. Jensen way back when the issue with Mrs. Murray came up. And so this isn't just a one-time thing. And there's also been other yelling at other people that aren't necessarily up here for the public comment. So I think this needs to be taken very seriously. I think Councilman Jensen needs to be censured. As I said in my previous speech, I think he needs to be removed as president of the council, and that someone else needs to be put into that position. As others have said, if we would happen to lose Mayor Spellerberg, is this the kind of demeanor that we want to represent the city of Fremont? I think the answer is unequivocally no. And so I would encourage every one of you to censure Mr. Jensen. And I will also say specifically to you, Mr. Jensen, I have nothing against you personally either. I don't know you. I don't hate you. I don't dislike you. But I just think that people that hold public office, and especially in your position, need to be held not only to a higher standard, but need to behave in a way that's respectful to the public, even when they disagree with the public. And I also, as others have said, I find your lack of remorse very troubling, very troubling. I don't understand why you wouldn't just come out and just apologize. But nonetheless, I think the censure is the right thing to do. Makes a statement if you want to go on in the coming months or coming meetings to talk about a different mechanism for doing discussion, that's fine. I worry a little bit with the way Mr. Vaughn represented that these times are meaningless and worthless. I don't know that I would construe them in that same manner. But nonetheless, I have no issue with what you're proposing. But tonight's issue is whether we're going to hold Councilman Jensen accountable for his actions. Thank you.
Linda Von Baron, 2046 East 30th Street. If you think this is easy or has been easy for my husband, then you don't know him. He has never wanted recognition, and public confrontation goes against who he is. The only reason he would ever file a motion like this would be that he believes if he doesn't, he's part of the problem. Councilman Jensen has never attacked or offended us, so this is not personal, Mark. And my husband never asked anything from anyone that he wouldn't expect from himself. In tough decisions like this, he always has only one simple question, and that is, what is the right thing to do? What I expect from him and what the public expects from you is to answer that question. What is the right thing to do? Please use that as your guide as you vote tonight. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no comments, we'll come back to council, any comments from the city council? Councilman Sukram.
Well, I do like Councilman Vaughn's idea. But I do think we should get through this item and do a straight vote on it, but put the foot on the gas for your idea. I really do like it. So that's all I really have to say about it.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I would like to clear up a couple of items, particularly for the public. One thing, please go listen to the KMTV article and see if you agree with Mr. Mr. Yerger's assessment of what that interview was like. I'm sure they've got it on their website. What Mr. Schultz said, that woman, I happened to be in the audience that day. These are two completely different things. At that time, it was over 5 years ago, we didn't even have public comment at that time. She was speaking on this particular agenda item and took the podium and refused to give it up. That's why she got escorted out. Another thing, as far as speaking with the public, the whole conversation that preceded and precipitated this thing on the 26th between myself and Dale Brunmeyer. Dale and I went to high school together. Our 50-year reunion's coming up next year. We worked at the same place. As far as I was concerned, we were having a private conversation, especially when he said what he said. I can't go into detail with it. Public figures are held to a different standard when it comes to libel and slander than the private citizens are. They're, without having complete documentation, there are things that I know are true that can't be said. And off the record, I pretty much told everybody what that conversation went like, and almost everybody agreed with me. Yeah, well, I understand why you felt that way. I don't believe, like I said, when Dale said what he did, it got under my skin. It is with somebody I'd had a relationship with for decades before. I don't believe my reaction would have been as strong with a member of the public that I didn't know, that I did not have a previous relationship with. That may have been why my reaction was strong. As far as Mrs. Brunmeyer, I never spoke to her at all. If she was on the phone, I didn't know it. The only one I talked to was Dale. Beyond that, I'll go with my original statement. I'm going to abstain on the vote, and council just vote as you see fit, and let's get on with the real business.
Councilman Vaughn.
Well, to follow up and summarize, the distinction between this particular vote and potential needed changes. I think it's important, at least from my purview, that our current broken process inadvertently led to this situation. Not that there may have been some culpability on Mr. Jensen's part, but it did inadvertently lead to that. We have to be cognizant of the fact that the other party stepped away from the podium at least twice, used profanity, pointed a finger in Mr. Jensen's face at least once. I don't know this for certain. I didn't go back and watch the tape. I believe the mayor had asked her to take her spot back at the podium, and she then approached again. Now, if Hulk Hogan was standing up there at the podium and he was angry with me and he was pointing fingers at me and he started to come around that podium, I'm not going to be silent. I'm probably going to be jumping out the window. But I don't want to get it misconstrued that just because it was a particular gender or age that excuses that behavior, and we are still not addressing that particular person's behavior. And I do you know, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but in the statement that Paul had prepared for this, in the last sentence of his background paragraph, the inevitable result of that failure has become a loss of transparency with controversial matters seemingly buried inside city government. And so that is why I'm proposing what I'm proposing. Secondarily, also, in the section titled Mayor/Council Transparency, we get to the point where it says that the normal city response is silence. Yeah, isn't that true? Public comment, that's our only recourse. I think that these two should be linked together as not to lose momentum. I've already promised in front of God, country, computer, and everybody that when this comes back, if we are agreeable to continue in order to get new provisions in place, I'll vote yes. And I'll be held up as the fool and the liar if I don't live up to my word. And I'm okay living with that. But I'm afraid what the end result is going to be here tonight is that with only 6 council members present, Mark abstaining, I'm not going to vote yes unless we continue this. I will vote yes if we do, but we're going to be stuck here with no censure placed on Mr. Jensen, and we're kind of right back at square one and potentially lose the momentum to change our public comment to a public discussion. I think they have to be intertwined for that reason, so we can keep it going and do something meaningful.
Councilman Von Baron.
The real problem that we're dealing with here is Fremont's history of pushing aside anything that's controversial and refusing to deal with it. I understand Councilman Vaughn was good enough to call me tonight before the meeting, and I had about 30 minutes to think about what he was saying. But yes, our community, we have no communication at our council meetings. These are good for making decisions. They are absolutely horrible for communications. That has absolutely nothing to do with anything that we're talking about here tonight. This isn't based on a single incident. This is a matter, we've watched the disrespect for the last few years, for the disrespect for the public. We've listened to derogatory remarks. We've seen smirks and grins and winks and nicknames applied to women. Public profanity, the violation of council speech limits, excuse me. And now we're using the disrespect for one constituent as a deflection for all of that. And it's equally interesting to me that at least 3 of those incidents have been directed at women. Those are the 3 most notable. I don't know that that means anything, but it's certainly, if we're going to try to deflect this with what happened on September 26th, Fremont is once again dodging our responsibility and burying this problem. And that's what frustrates me. This is not, again, about an individual. I just found it interesting that all of a sudden tonight, our process became a problem. Good grief, who'd have thought? We've only been talking about it for the last few years. You know, what a relative, trying to find a nice term for it. Our end of the month comment period does not work. We've only talked about that for 3 years. But now, tonight, it comes up, and basically it is holding this censure motion hostage. If we can't get that in place after the years that we've talked about it, and then all of a sudden the censure motion isn't valid, I just honestly, between that and trying to deflect this with the individual incidents on 26, I'm just somewhat stunned at this whole process. This is not the matter at hand. The matter at hand is simply asking that whether or not we are going to be accountable as a city for what we do. That's a pretty simple yes or no. This is the mildest thing that we can do to send a statement about that behavior. And the problem that I deal with, if you don't believe ethics matter, look at the police station. We had a study done in 2011. We have put that off for 12 years. And I would argue largely for the personal agenda of a previous administration, not this one. But look what it's going to do. We have now succeeded in doubling our costs for that police station because one person did not have the character to put Fremont first and put his own personal agenda ahead of that. If we truly believe that our decisions are not important and don't determine the course of Fremont, we frankly don't deserve to be up here. And if we don't believe that our character determines what those decisions are, we're kidding ourselves. The character of every person sitting at this desk and in city administration especially determines the long-term future of Fremont. Our city will be no better than the character of our decisions. And that's why this bothers me. This is principle. This isn't just about trying to isolate this to an incident on 26. If that lady can be charged, that's fine. Then the only difference is in 2018, we did choose to charge a lady. We fined her, we escorted her out, we arrested her, and she was fined publicly and tried. The only difference is we have never held the council accountable for that same standard of behavior. And I just think the council, if we turn our backs on this one and let it be held hostage to a negotiation tactic, I think we're failing in our responsibility. I will apologize to the people of Fremont. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Lathrop, Councilman Von Buren, you're on still. Go ahead.
It's really hard to think that he's holding this hostage. If we don't get to the root of a problem, we're always going to have some sort of a problem coming right back at us. So I don't see the problem with continuing it. Mr. Vaughn already said that he's going to vote for the censure. But again, we need to get to the root of the problem in the first place.
Okay, any other comment? Councilman Dinkins, you're the only one that hasn't commented at this point. Any comments from you? Okay. So at this point, everyone's spoken. I would take a motion, yeah. So. Councilman Vaughn?
I would make a motion to continue for, do I say 2 weeks? I don't know if it would be that short of a time frame, or do I ask for 4? Let's just do 2 weeks would be my motion for continuation. Yeah, yes.
Councilwoman Lathrop?
Second.
Okay, cast your votes.
Motion fails 2-3 with 1 abstention.
Okay. Take an additional motion. Councilman Von Buren?
I would move, and believe me, there is no pleasure in doing this, but I would move that we move ahead with this agenda item as stated and proceed with just simply the formal statement from the council of censure for Councilman Jensen.
Is there a second? Councilman Sukram?
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion fails 4-1 with one abstention, Mayor.
Okay, we'll move on. Item 25, ordinance 5660, amending chapter 5, article 3 of the Fremont Municipal Code, section 5-301, speed regulations. This would be for first reading. There's also a request to suspend the rules and move to final reading. Councilwoman Lathrop.
Councilwoman Ganem and myself are bringing this item forward to request the speed limit changes to Morningside Road and to Luther Road. We've had a previous public comment, we've had concerns with the speed on Morningside Road at 45 miles an hour. And with issues at the intersection of Luther Road and Morningside. And we feel that with a lowered speed limit to 35, that this is going to alleviate some of those issues. I met with a safety commission, and they agreed that lowering the speed limit on Morningside Road from Old County Road 8 all the way to the east to the 275 bypass would be acceptable. Furthermore, we are asking that the speed limit on Luther Road from the tracks to Morningside be decreased from 40 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour as well. Also, items that were brought up about pedestrian safety. By lowering the speed limit, we can address those issues at a later date. Our first step is to lower the speed limit at this time.
Any questions from the council for Councilwoman Lathrop on this? Councilman Vaughn?
Would it be something you would consider to make these changes temporary? And I advocate for that because I feel like the traffic patterns and flow around town are so messed up with our viaduct being closed for the extended period of time. I could only imagine and make some guesses at how much more traffic is coming down Morningside that would have gone down Old 275. And are we gonna put permanent things into place that might possibly be alleviated or feel or look and act entirely different once that viaduct is reopened? Only hesitation there. And then secondarily, I understand that part of this has to do with, public safety, and also you mentioned, the child safety aspect. We as a council approved some child safety measures we wanted to put in place as far as a sidewalk out of Johnson Crossing, and I believe that was in July, and here we are, and it's still not done. I understand our city's resources are finite. There's only so much that folks can do at any given time. But, how does this one leapfrog the other? I would hate to see one get left in the dust in favor of the easy one. Hey, I would just change out some speed limit signs and that's that. And then ultimately, is that the right call for the long term when traffic flow returns to normal?
Yeah, I'll allow it's your item, and I'll just allow questions for you and you can respond.
Okay, James, that was brought up. It's a very legitimate question. That was brought up. I believe this public comment was prior to the Bell Street Viaduct closing. When the speed limit 45, what's happening is people are coming off from 275 and they're signaling to turn onto Luther Road to go north. And, they see that there's a train there. They swerve back into traffic, and that's causing some issues out there. So that's the main reason we want to reduce that speed limit out there, as well as there's further development out there. I don't know if you've seen the newest Deerfield apartment building. Yeah. And, there's the Fremont Crossing apartments out there, and just further development on Morningside Road, I think constitutes these lowered speed limits.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'll just share. I was at the UIB meeting today. Mr. Zetterman spoke at great length about the developments over there and how sidewalks would be the next logical step. I don't know if he'd care to elaborate on that a little bit, but that was spoken to at some length at the Utility Infrastructure Board meeting today, that it was that was a big concern in that area, especially with all the new development.
Justin, would you like to speak on that, please?
Good evening, Justin Zetterman, Director of Public Works. So I guess I'll start by saying staff met with Councilwoman Lathrop, and we discussed what we currently see out there. We don't have extensive accident data or anything that we're seeing that occurring, but as she pointed out, we are seeing growth. And 10 years ago, it was a county road, basically. There was no driveways, there was no connections. Now we've got multiple driveways, we've got new streets being added, we've got the new apartments going up. We've been in talks with a couple other developments that may be looking at that same area. The port's on its way. This is a narrow street, and we, because of those reasons, feel we can support going with a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. During the UIB, we did discuss it a lot, and sidewalks along there were something that they were clearly interested in, and how we could pursue that in the future. As I've thought about it since that meeting, after we get the Parks Master Plan completed, between Public Works, Planning, and Parks, we're going to be going out to do a walkability study for Fremont, and having that consultant focus on this area and make suggestions on what we can do to improve it. It goes beyond just a rural section road with ditches on each side where there's not a lot of space for sidewalks. We still will always have the issue with how do we get kids across the railroad tracks. And so that group, when they're putting that study together, could focus on that whole area and give us some guidance on the best way to move forward safely with that. But even in the short term, like I said, staff is agreeable that this would improve safety as we have more turning vehicles. There's no center turn lane. There's no decel lanes into any of these businesses, no decel lane onto Luther. It's just, if somebody's turning, you're going to be slowing down for them as they turn into that driveway or start pulling out of that driveway, and 35 will just make it a little safer and easier for everybody, is our thought.
Anybody that hasn't spoken at this point that would like to? Okay, and anybody here to speak on this item?
I'm Glenn Kai. I live at 2550 Deerfield Avenue. A friend of mine was gracious enough that he loaned me his radar detector. So my grandson and I, we walked up and down the road and took readings of people coming from every direction. And on Morningside Road, 45 is the speed limit, but they were all pushing 50. So right there, it explains a lot of the problem. It's just too darn fast coming down Morningside Road. And Luther Road, that's ridiculous. It's 35 all the way down to the railroad tracks. And then you got that section from the tracks to the intersection at 40. That's how consistent this town is. You never know what the speed limit is going to be. Make it the same all the way through. Yes, make 35 the Morningside speed limit. There's people coming out of there it's ridiculous. And now tonight, just by chance, a lady put this on Facebook for a public service announcement on Morningside and Luther. It's not a four-way stop. Morningside is 45 miles an hour. And this week so far, 3 different cars have pulled out from the stop sign on Luther on the Morningside so close that she almost hit them. 2 weeks ago, a guy pulled out in front of a semi. If there would not have been oncoming traffic, there'd have been a heck of a mess and they'd all landed in my yard. because the semi went down the wrong lane of traffic to keep from running over the guy that pulled out in front of him. 45, even if they're driving 45, 45 is still too darn fast. 35 will at least give people a chance in and out of traffic, in and out of the driveways. We've got semi places in there now where trucks are hauling. They're hauling into that seed corn plant. There's 8 to 10 semis a day coming through there. It's just ridiculous. If the city can't step up and do something, what else can they do? Thank you.
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124. I came to the planning meeting the other day and they didn't have public input, so I didn't say this, but I went to the open house of the city department over by the 4th Street Viaduct, Broad Street Viaduct, and we have signs that we have a room there. They can make signs and stuff. And I think on Luther Road and the railroad tracks, the sidewalk by Buck Park comes and then you got no sidewalk across the railroad tracks. And I thought if the street department would take a white paint and then put one of these signs where pedestrians, because we have a few of those along Luther, they could put the sign there and then the people from the sidewalk could come out to the street and walk along the west side of the street going across the railroad tracks. And if you put a white line there, then the cars could see that. And I really never see any pedestrians there. One time when I went by, I saw about 25 adults there and I thought maybe it was a Parent Teachers Association was doing something, but anyway, if we would use a little white paint and paint a strip along there so that the people walking could come out and walk along on the west side of the street there, and maybe the sign could say narrow railroad crossing, or just put one of those with show the pedestrians walking. And if they had the white line there, the people can see the white line, and then maybe in the middle of the railroad tracks put a yellow line and split the difference so that both sides have to share a little of that. And you could put a yellow line in the middle of the tracks. And then they could come around there and maybe sprinkle some of this crushed rock to get from the sidewalk out to here and then back from here to the sidewalk going by. But it's a simple hillbilly one that I would do for temporary. It's a temporary patch. So that's what I'm suggesting that you think about.
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I'd like to start off by thanking Councilman Lathrop and Councilman Ganem for putting this on the agenda, and for Mr. Zetterman's and the traffic committee's support of lowering the speed limits on Morningside Road. This actually was precipitated with some discussion that came up several meetings ago with Mr. Kai, who brought some vehicular safety issues. Coupled at that meeting, I also spoke about some student safety issues as well. And I also brought up the fact that the city of Fremont pledged to do something with the Morningside Road traffic issue as soon as the bypass was completed. It's been completed. This is like the Broad Street project. You know, we promised something. Are you going to fulfill this? The traffic on Morningside has been going at a clip well above what the 45-mile-an-hour posted speed limit is. That's unsafe. It's unsafe because we've been bringing new businesses in there. A lot of those are trucks. They take a while to make a turn onto the street. All those apartment complexes are going in. They have children. We're developing Morningside Point. They have homes. They're going to have children. We don't have sidewalks. 45-mile-an-hour speed limit is not something that I think we should be, quote, and I'm sorry, Councilman Vaughn, we should not put it on hold during the viaduct for public safety concerns. Children in this community come first. If it slows down traffic a little bit more, I'm sorry, traffic can slow down a little bit more because kids won't walk away if they have contact with a vehicle. So I think it's really important that this get passed tonight. It was coupled with and a precursor, as Councilman Lathrop pointed out. We can't approach the four-way stop sign issue on Luther, as Mr. Zetterman said earlier, until we get the speed limits intact. One of the ways that you do that is you pass this tonight so that you can make the traffic feel what they need to drive. Then when they have to actually make a stop at Luther consciously, which they're kind of doing anyway, which is creating a traffic hazard because there isn't stop signs, at least now we'll be positioned to take that up as they study what that should be. So this is really an important first step. And I'm glad that it's before you tonight. I hope you pass this. Quite honestly, it's an important enough issue for student safety reasons that I would hope you would pass this through and waive it to final reading and get it over with. Thank you.
All right, additional comments, questions from council that you may have. Councilman Sukram.
Well, this area is becoming more residential than anything, and it's great to finally get ahead of a problem instead of chasing it. So I appreciate both councilmen bringing them forward, and that's about it.
Councilman Jensen.
If there's no further comment, I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 560 for first reading.
Councilman Vaughn.
I did have one other comment if I could. I will ceremoniously vote no on the first reading because other things that this council has identified that we needed to put in place for child safety are still unanswered. But ultimately, after hearing the discussion, lack of sidewalks in the area, people coming off there at a high rate of speed, yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes. This is first reading.
Motion carries 5-1, Mayor.
Okay, we'll now have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, repealing and replacing and amending ordinance, amending chapter 5, article 3 of the Fremont Municipal Code, section 5-301, speed regulations and all other ordinances, parts of ordinances conflict with this ordinance, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force in effect on first reading.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'll make the request to suspend the rules and move ordinance 5560 to third and final reading.
Councilman Sukram.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We'll now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, repealing and amending chapter 5, article 3 of the Fremont Municipal Code, section 5-301, speed regulations and all other ordinances, parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing when this ordinance shall be full force in effect on final reading.
Okay, cast for final vote. Oh, do we need final reading? Sorry. Oh, we did. Sorry. Cast your final vote.
The ordinance is approved 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 26 is the executive session for litigation update. So I would, you all have the language. I'd need a motion. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I move to go into executive session for purpose of strategy session with respect to pending litigation and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Councilman Vaughn.
I second the motion.
A motion has been made and seconded to go into executive session for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to pending litigation for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Is there any discussion? Okay. The pending motion is to go into executive session for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to pending litigation for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Cast your vote.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
A motion to go into executive session for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to pending litigation for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest has been approved. Discussion will be limited to strategy session with respect to pending litigation. No official actions or votes will be taken. We'll now go into the conference room.
Zoom past going from time, keep disconnecting.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Care of here. All right.
I could. Didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, are we ready here? Take a motion to come out of executive session. Councilman Vaughn.
So moved.
Councilman Jensen.
Second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 27 is a resolution 2023-276 approving the settlement agreement and release of allocation of settlement funds between the city of Fremont and Weiss Construction doing business as PWC Public Works Constructors. Take a motion by the city council in regards to this item. Councilman Sukram.
Make the motion for resolution 2023-276.
Councilman Jensen.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 28, ordinance 5661, amending chapter 6, police regulations, article 1, dogs and cats, section 6-107.6, appeal of dangerous or potentially dangerous animal declaration. This would be for first reading. Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, back in kind of like, what was it, earlier this year, we passed the animal control ordinance. And the thought at that time being we needed to give the police enough to enforce the dangerous animal portion, but with the understanding that it was going to take a lot of additional work. So as an informal committee, we've been meeting for the last, probably 6 or 8 months, just working on this. And I had to miss the last meeting where this was decided. But essentially the Animal Appeals Commission or committee has listened to at least one case where evidently the owner did not receive notification of the hearing. Part of it is the confusion on timeframes and what's going on. And I've asked Brad Yerger, he's got 2 years of history with this. He was also present at that meeting. And I've asked him to come forward and explain that situation if he would, and the changes that we're proposing.
Brad, you're 2318 East Fifth Street.
Can I get a motion to receive this before you go, if that's all right?
Sure.
Okay. Councilman Von Baron.
Yes, motion to receive.
Councilman Vaughn.
I would second.
Okay, cast your votes, please.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
You can go ahead. Thank you.
What the attorney is handing out is the ordinance that's in your packet, except the one that's in your packet doesn't have red line and blue line entries on it. So if you wanted to see the changes, wanted to make it clearer for you tonight. It didn't reproduce the way it should have, I guess. At any rate, I wanted to give you a little background in this. Currently, I'm serving as the Appeals Committee Chair, which is why I'm here tonight to explain some of this with regards to the change in this ordinance. We had originally said in this committee that we were also working on with regards to the animal ordinances in general. We didn't plan on changing any of the Section 6 dangerous dog ordinances because we just passed it as a council several months ago and we didn't want to do any changes to that. Having heard several appeals now, the Appeals Commission and the law enforcement CSOs feel we need to do something to clarify what we're giving to the individuals with regards to notice when they receive a dangerous or potentially dangerous dog notice and or a reckless owner notice. The language that we're changing here is pretty straightforward in the sense that we're really just trying to make sure that they understand how many days they have to actually file their appeal. Today it says you have 72 hours, but it doesn't really say do weekends count, do holidays count, or any of those kinds of things. So we're clarifying for those reasons to make sure that they know when they have to get their appeal in. And then, of course, the city has 10 days to respond, and we have that same kind of concern with regards to, well, do we have to count holidays and weekends? How do we count those? What we found out in discovery discussions with the post office is that we don't have to exclude Saturdays, for example, on the appeal side of this, because the post office does postmark the day of receipt up until 2:30. And even if you send it to Omaha before in the 2:30 drop, it will still get postmarked the same day. So we didn't feel we needed to give relief on Saturday, but obviously nobody is open on Sunday. And you can always hand deliver to City Hall, except City Hall isn't open on Saturday, but you can get a postmark. So we thought we wanted to keep this as short as possible because here's the problem. If we make it too long and the animals for some reason are confiscated by law enforcement, they go to Forever Home and they start a rolling clock on the fees and charges that they have to pay while the animals being sheltered. So we want that to be as limited as possible, move the process along as fast as possible. So we've clarified on the, like I said, on the appeal side, 72 hours, but how do you count those days? We've talked to the city clerk with regards to making sure we had the appropriate amount of timing allowed to get the public notice in the paper because we have noticing requirements as well. So we needed to fit that all in. That's what you have in this red line and why we are recommending that we change it. And we need to do it as soon as possible. So obviously this is an ordinance change. The changes are simple in the sense that it's just a matter of explaining what days count. For those reasons, the Appeals Commission would like you to pass this post haste. The reason being that the next step is this, that law enforcement has to change the appeals forms that they are issuing to the public when they have a notice given to them. And right now they are handwriting, altering those, initialing off on the changes to clarify, but they'd like to reprint those notices as soon as possible, but they don't want to do it until the ordinance is in place. So I'll take any questions you have about what we're trying to do or the expedited urgency of getting this accomplished.
Councilman Vaughn?
Yeah, just a quick question. Was there some perceived notion out there from the public of animal that was taken or declared that 72 hours wasn't long enough, or how?
I can't really speak to that. There may have been some confusion early on in the process when we first got going. I don't know that it's been a problem necessarily with the notices that have been issued. We did have a problem, as Councilman Von Baron indicated, in getting the notice of the hearing given to an individual that says show up. They filed their appeal in a timely fashion, but we didn't give them their notice. And so we had to deal with that in an unusual fashion. That didn't really have anything to do with this. They followed the 72 hours. We followed the 10 days, but there was a lapse in making public notice to them of the hearing. So that was the city's fault. And But that didn't have anything to do with why we're having to rewrite this. This just had all to do, the original form that the CSOs are using today was printed with giving 10 days notice for appeal. Should have been 72 hours. And then there was the question, well, 72 hours and what days count? And so we said, well, let's just clarify it all together and make sure that the code says what we're actually doing. So that's what's here.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Von Baron.
If there are no other questions, I would move that we approve these amendments to 6-107.6 stated.
Are these I just want to be clear. These are amendments. Okay, so then, okay. Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Now I take a motion to approve. We just need to have first reading then. Okay, all right.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, appealing and replacing and amending chapter 6 police regulations, article 1 dogs and cats, section 6-107.6 appeal of dangerous or potentially dangerous animal declaration and all other ordinances, parts of ordinances conflict with this ordinance, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on first reading.
Councilman Von Baron,
Second. Oh, excuse me.
just need a motion if we want to
Yes.
suspend the rules and hold final
Yes,
reading.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. I was getting ahead of myself.
You're all right.
Yeah, motion to suspend the rules and move to the third reading.
Councilman Jensen,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, repealing and placing, amending chapter 6 police regulations, article 1 dogs and cats, section 6-107.6 appeal of dangerous or potentially dangerous animal declaration and all other ordinances, parts of ordinances conflict with this ordinance, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on final reading.
Cast your final vote.
Ordinance is approved 6-0, Mayor.
Item 29 is resolution 2023-277, accepting the resignation of council member Glenn Ellis, acknowledging the return of city property and directing the clerk to publish a notice of vacancy.
Thank you, Mayor. Received the notice of resignation from Councilmember Ellis. I did receive an email from him verifying that he was not in possession of any city property, and so I would be able to sign that certificate. I'd be able to answer any questions you may have regarding this item.
Any questions? Anybody here to speak on this item?
Brad Yeager, 2318 East Fifth Street. Just wanted to share a few thoughts with you as a former councilman and peer of Glenn Ellis. Councilman Ellis served Ward 2 in this entire community with distinction for 5 years, and I was shocked and deeply saddened by Glenn's resignation from council. His resignation will leave a huge leadership void and some big shoes to fill. He, with the support and sacrifice of his wife Nancy, developed a hallmark place to come to Fremont. The Lady Coffee House is widely known, as is the ongoing restoration of the May Brothers building that now includes a reception hall and business offices and residential living space. This dynamic duo demonstrated creativity and vision for what Fremont could be. They began the community heart and soul movement, and they were instrumental in Fremont's downtown revitalization. While on council, I personally witnessed Councilman Ellis striving to bring truth, transparency, trust, transition, and transformation to Fremont's governance. Glenn's fingerprints and leadership are found all over the city if you look. He championed much needed leadership in the administration and reform. He was the driver behind the city council's YouTube videos that enabled non-attending public to keep abreast of city affairs. He helped implement the monthly open public comment sessions so that the attending public could bring their ideas and concerns directly to council. He effectively used social media as a means to inform and educate the public on council affairs. His detailed budget and audit analysis focused on prudent spending of taxpayer funds and exposed excess accumulated reserves, which led to pushing through property tax relief. He personally researched and sought insight from successful communities throughout Nebraska in order to bring best practices to Fremont. He helped expose the Tech Park debacle and the Attorney General's audit findings on undocumented spending and the Barrett Home librarian harassment investigation. His May Brothers building renovation became a downtown cornerstone that led to the 505 building renovation project and the 505 brewery. His building renovation occurred despite many obstacles created by the prior administration. The new city van service was the result of Glenn's response to one of his concerned senior citizen constituents. He was in the forefront and advocated for public safety, including the addition of 6 new firefighters. He doggedly pursued action on the police station and championed its location in the downtown area. He stood strong on the issues surrounding the protection of children from obscene, pornographic, and indoctrinating library books. I could go on and on. Suffice it to say, Glenn and his wife Nancy sacrificially served this community and set an example for what real leadership, commitment, and vision look like. Glenn's department from council is a huge loss to this community and the citizens of Fremont. And we owe Glenn and Nancy a great deal of gratitude for a job well done. I'm proud to have served with Councilman Ellis. He and Nancy both deserve to be publicly recognized for their outstanding leadership, service, and dedication to Fremont. I wish the best for them as they seek to promote their new vision and use their talents to develop new horizons. All I can say is they did a lot for this city. Well done, Glenn and Nancy.
Anybody else here to speak on this item? Any comments from the council? If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilman Vaughn.
I would make a motion to approve resolution 2023-2777, accepting the resignation of council member Glenn Ellis.
Councilman Jensen.
And I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 31 is a mayor item. Consider a motion to move the last regular meeting of December 2023 to December 21st, 2023 as provided by Fremont Municipal Code Section 2-102. I have been approached by one council member, and this meeting is on the 26th of December. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were able to get quorum, as that's the week between Christmas and New Year's and the day after Christmas. So this is just proposing to move that meeting again to the December 21st. Again, to make sure we can have a meeting and have everybody here as well as staff, and whatever needs to get accomplished for the city that can get done. So that's the reason for that move. Again, it is provided in Fremont Municipal Code Section 2-102. Is there any questions from the council on that? Councilman Jensen?
Well, no real question, just maybe for others on council that haven't been around during a holiday season. This last meeting in December is a micro meeting. There will be very few agenda items. It will be to get done what absolutely has to be done to clear the year and be done. So if it is around the holidays, but time shouldn't be a problem. It's not we're going to be here all night or anything, or wouldn't expect to.
Okay, Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, I've only been here for one of these, but I share Councilman Jensen's remarks. It was pretty light. And I guess the question is, are there year-end items that we have to clear up, or is it, if it's going to be, last year it was basically a token meeting. I guess the question is, do we need the meeting? Not trying to get out of work, but given what it was, it just seems like a valid question.
Can I say that?
Yes.
Jody Sanders, City Administrator. One of the important functions of the council is to approve the claims. And so typically claims and minutes are what you see on that agenda because we do try and keep it light. To mitigate or, to reduce the amount of time that we're asking council to be here.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion on this item. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to move the meeting to December 21st, 2023.
Councilman Sukram.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Sukram.
What's the motion to adjourn?
Councilman Jensen.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.